This is day 6 of LIVEMAS, 25 Days of Visibility with Rashonda Pratt, Visibility and Communication Strategist. I'm so glad that you are joining us on this journey. If you have been with us for the last couple of days, I want you to let me know in the chat that you have been here since the beginning. So just drop in the chat. Let's see what the keyword is. Beginning. I want you to let me know that you've been watching. So I am streaming right now on YouTube and LinkedIn. Thank you, friends, so much for being here. I'm excited about today's conversation because we have covered so much on the last couple of days. But today I want to really lean in telling my own visibility story, because I think a lot of times that people can see your glory, but really don't understand your story. So today, this one's a little bit different. We finished week 1, 5 days of framework, strategies, diagnostics, and you learned the 5 Ps. You've audited your visibility and you saw the authority bridge. Today, there's really not any frameworks or assignments. Today, I'm just telling you my story, because I think it's so important for you to know I wasn't always visible. In fact, I was the woman that didn't like her voice and didn't like how she looked on camera. So I always tell that story because I had to write my permissions. I want you to understand, all of us had a genesis, all of us had a beginning, and look at where I am now. And doing the work, stewarding my own visibility, taking and understanding the power of my own voice has totally transformed my life. The person you see now showing up live for 25 days in a row, teaching visibility strategy and confidence on camera, that took 20 years to build. But it doesn't have to take that long for you. It wasn't linear for me. It wasn't pretty. And there were moments that I almost quit. So today I want to take you behind the scenes how this all started. Now, my journey in television news started when I was in the 4th grade. My mom and dad are from the beautiful country of Trinidad and Tobago. And my dad told me as a 4th grader and an American citizen, it was my duty and responsibility to know what was going on in my country and my community. So while my friends were watching Saturday morning cartoons, I was watching the news. I grew up with Peter Jennings and Tom Brokaw. In fact, I remember when Oprah first came on the scene, and I was learning about Reaganomics, the Gulf War, and everything that was happening at the time. Fast forward to high school, and shout out to one of my classmates, Aaron Green, who invited me to be our campus reporter. And he said, "Ro, you like to talk a lot." It was then when I started to realize that I could make a career out of this, because at the time, there wasn't a lot of women you would see on TV. At the time, we were starting to see Barbara Walters, Connie Chung, and of course, our beloved Oprah. So I went to Winthrop University, a college in South Carolina, to study broadcast journalism. And so my time in television news started really very early on. I had my first television news job while I was a senior in college. I will tell you, it was baptism by fire, but I fell in love with television news. Not because I necessarily wanted to be on the camera, because I loved storytelling. I loved being informed, and I loved keeping my community informed as well. I loved the process of television news. Seriously. 20 years working behind the scenes as a television news producer, I did not. The only thing I hated about my job was breaking news and always having to work the holidays and always being on call. But other than that, I love the process of finding the story angle, structuring the narrative, making complex things clear and simple, and delivering information that mattered. So for 20 years, I was behind the camera as a producer. I told other people's stories, and I made other people visible. And I was pretty good at it. I produced thousands of stories. I've launched shows. I've covered breaking news. I've trained reporters and anchors and producers. I became an expert at visibility even before I know it was a thing. But it was always someone else's visibility. And I remember being in TV and having this aha moment. At the time, I was working again in Charlotte, North Carolina, my first television news station, which was a top 20 market at the time. And I was working with one of our main anchors. dynamic woman. And I was writing a script for her because producers write scripts for the anchors to read. And I was sitting there doing the 11 o'clock news, rolling the prompter, because at the time I was an associate producer before I became a producer. And I remember sitting there saying to myself, wow, Sonia is reading my words. That means my words must have value. But why do I not understand that? She trusts my words and she's reading them on air. And I believe that's when God really started the visibility process for me, way before live stream came on the scene. But there was some tension, right? And this is what happened to me over time. I started to notice a gap. The people I was making visible, some of them weren't even good at it. Can I be honest? They had decent expertise, sure, but I knew people, colleagues, friends, leaders, people in my community who had more expertise, more experience, and more value to offer, but they were invisible. I also noticed that there were a lot of dynamic people who would come to the TV station to tell their story and didn't know how to tell their story. And the reason why many of these people were invisible in telling their story or even invisible in their expertise wasn't because they weren't good enough. It was because no one was producing their story. And that tension lived with me for years. That tension was also causing me to sit and take a look at the fact that I wasn't producing my own story. So I'd go to work, produce someone else's message, take my words and lend it to someone else. And I'd come home and think about all the other people whose messages were never being heard. Then in about 2015, a cool app came on the scene. You may remember Periscope. That gave all of us the capabilities to live stream using our smartphone. I knew then, ladies and gentlemen, that this was going to be innovative and game-changing. Because having worked in television news for so many years, I know what it takes to go live. And some guys figured it out in their basement. I don't know if that's really their story, but that's how I like to envision it, that they were in their basement and they figured out how to get us to use our phones by downloading an app and give us the capabilities to go live and become an international speaker, to become an influencer right from your home. And I started doing it. Now, remember, I was the woman who didn't like her voice, who didn't like being on camera, but I just knew I had a story, I knew I had something to say. And honestly, I really wanted to be the next Oprah, even my own voice and how I looked. And so I started telling people what I know, how to tell better stories and how to pitch to the media. And I started doing this. I started owning my own story, and I started building my camera confidence and building my visibility muscle. I was going to take everything that I learned about visibility while working in television news, storytelling, strategy, and production, and teach it to the people who needed it most. The hidden experts, the brilliant leaders no one knew about, the people who were doing incredible work in obscurity. And that's when I started The Rose Show Live. And I'm going to tell you, it was terrifying. In fact, The Rose Show is a nickname that I've had at every television station I've worked for. And when I started showing up online, what was so funny is people started calling me The Rose Show Live. I was like, oh, it's following me here everywhere. And the thing that no one tells you is, even with having worked 20 years in television news, I still was uncomfortable doing the thing that I saw so many other people do. And I just started doing it afraid. And fast forward to building this online brand, and then people inviting me to come speak, and then me writing a book that became an Amazon bestseller in 24 hours, teaching people how to live stream. I decided to take a bet on myself after some prompting from my husband to become an entrepreneur, to go from being an expert to feeling like a beginner was terrifying. Like, I was somewhat comfortable in this TV thing and I was getting more comfortable in front of the camera, but now I'm going to teach it to other people. Because see, in TV, I knew what I was doing. I had authority. I had a track record. People called on me when they needed help, right? Being an entrepreneur, that was new. I was still learning how to position myself, how to price my services, how to market my business, and how to build a personal brand. But here's the irony. I was trying to teach people visibility while feeling completely invisible myself. But I had one advantage. What I knew very well is how to produce content by telling my story. So that's what I started teaching. And that's what I started going live even more. And not because I felt ready, not because I was all the way confident, and not because I had it all figured out. Listen, I embraced progress over perfection every single time, and I still live by that. But because I knew that visibility creates opportunity, and I needed opportunities. So I showed up daily at first. Sometimes I remember back in those days, I was doing live streaming to get more comfortable, sometimes twice a day. Crazy when I think about that. And then it went to weekly, then consistently in whatever rhythm and season that I could sustain. And then I started slowly seeing things happen. Someone saw a live video, invited me to speak. True story. Speaking engagements led to consultant clients. True story. A consultant client referred me to another client. Someone shared my content and I got a podcast invitation. And that podcast led to so many other opportunities. But it wasn't overnight, but it was compounding. And it's still doing that today. In 2020, during the pandemic, everything shifted. I remember when I started doing live streaming in those early years of live streaming, and so many of my colleagues laughed at me, said that live streaming was a fad, a trend, more ways for people to be irresponsible on social media. But I just kept building because, like Noah, I just kept building this arc because I had a vision. I knew what my gut was telling me. I knew what I had peace about. And I just kept doing the thing because I knew rain was coming. And that rain was a pandemic because everyone was stuck at home. And suddenly, everyone was trying to figure out how to be visible online. I didn't have to figure it out. I had already been practicing for several years. So during the pandemic, we made 6 figures. During the pandemic, I was on the Today Show twice. Funny moment, Today Show producer, when I turned on my camera, said, "Oh my gosh, love your setup." We had an opportunity to do keynote addresses, Zoom trainings. Why? Because we were already doing the thing. Let me just lean into you, visionary. Be okay with being a pioneer. Be okay with being first. Jamie Kern-Lima says it like this: you're not crazy, you're just first. And so be okay that your friends, your family, your bestie doesn't understand what you're doing, but you just know in your knower that this is the thing that you need to lean into. I have done hundreds of live videos. I have built the muscle. I had figured out the frameworks, and I was ready during a pandemic when everyone else was panicking about how do I show up. My colleagues that talked about me, that laughed, told me that this was a passing trend, had to go buy my book, had to shop my Amazon store, because when opportunities explode, you have to be ready. My first business coach told me that when momentum happens, it's not required to give you an encore. Someone put that in the comments. When momentum happens, it is not required to give you an encore. So some of those opportunities, I became a LinkedIn learning instructor. They reached out to me and I became a certified LinkedIn instructor and have 2 courses on the platform. Media invitations, CBS, NBC, Tamron Hall Show. Speaker fees went up. Clients came inbound instead of me chasing them. People started calling me the first lady of visibility. This was an overnight success. It took 20 years to build this and dozens of years of practice to be consistent. So here's a lesson that I want you to learn from this journey. because this is what I want you to know. Lesson number 1, visibility is built in private before it's ever seen in public. I live by the fact that visibility is power, but visibility starts as an inside job. Those 20 years in the newsroom, that wasn't wasted time. Man, that was my training ground. And I'm so grateful for that. That was what helped me build my expertise that would become my authority. Your hidden expert years aren't wasted. They're the foundation. Lesson 2, consistency beats perfection every single time. My early live videos were bad. The lighting was terrible. I rambled. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know how to introduce myself. But I kept showing up. And eventually, the reps made me better. The practice, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be present. Be present. Lesson number 3, the breakthrough comes after you want to quit. I almost stopped. When I'd go live and only 3 people would show up, disappointing. When I'd post and there'd be no engagement, little to none. When I'd pitch and get rejected. When I'd compare myself to others and feel like I was behind. I didn't quit. And the breakthrough came. Not because I was special, but because I stayed the course. Lesson number 4, your visibility serves more than just you. This is the one thing that keeps me going. When I think about quitting, when I think about hiding, when I think about playing small and shrinking, I remember the people who need what I know. The executive who's overlooked despite being brilliant, the founder who's struggling to be seen, the consultant who has so much to offer, but no one knows about them. Visibility isn't selfish, it's stewardship. And that's why I do this work. So today, here I am, day 6, going live, 25 consecutive days. Know that visibility compounds when you show up consistently. Teaching you the frameworks that I built over 20 years because I don't want it to take you 20 years. I want you to get there faster than I did. Walking the bridge with you because I've walked it myself and I'm still walking it. Because here's the truth. Becoming a go-to authority isn't a destination. It's a practice over and over and over again. I'm in the stage 4 of the authority bridge, but I'm still doing the work. Clarifying my position, evolve, showing up consistently even when it's hard. It has been hard having some internet issues. Creating strategic content, not just posting, building community, not just broadcasting, having the courage to be seen, and converting visibility to impact. The work doesn't end, it just changes. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. So that's my story. 20 years in television news, several years building in public, and now helping leaders just like you do the same. Your journey won't look like mine, but the principles are the same. Build your expertise, even if it's not visible yet. Show up consistently, even when it feels like no one's watching. Stay when you want to quit, because the breakthrough is coming. And remember who you're serving. It's bigger than you. Tomorrow, Sunday, we're doing a weekly reset, a moment to reflect on week 1 and prepare for week 2. All of the replays are available on my YouTube channel under the playlist LIVEMAS, and my YouTube channel is Visibility is Power TV. But today, I just want you to see me, the person behind the frameworks, the person who's walked the bridge and is still walking it, because you're not alone in this journey, and I'm walking it with you. I'm so excited about what we're building together over the next couple of days. You guys have been an amazing audience, and thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, your visibility is power. You deserve to be seen, heard, and paid. Until next time.